The laughter stopped abruptly when I placed my hand on Grandma Eleanor's antique mahogany table and looked each of my cousins directly in the eye. Since you all think my handmade quilt is so hilarious, I think it's time you know what Grandma actually left each of you in her will. I hadn't planned to reveal it like this, at her 80th birthday celebration with 30 relatives watching, but after 20 years of their snide remarks and barely concealed contempt, something inside me finally snapped. Megan's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. Derek's perfect smile faltered. Aunt Patricia stopped mid-conversation. The silence was deafening as I opened the folder I'd kept hidden in my bag. The same folder Grandma had entrusted to me, not her Harvard-educated grandchildren or her CEO sons, 5 years ago when she made me executor of her entire estate. They had absolutely no idea what was coming, and in that moment, watching their faces, I realized I wasn't the family disappointment after all. I was their reckoning. Growing up in the Sullivan family meant growing up in the shadow of excellence. My father was the only one who broke the mold, a high school art teacher who married my mother, a kindergarten teacher, while his brothers became surgeons and corporate executives. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in western Massachusetts, while my uncles owned waterfront properties in Cape Cod and vacation homes in Vermont. Grandma Eleanor was the matriarch, a formidable woman who had built a small inheritance into a fortune through smart real estate investments around Boston in the 1970s. Her colonial home in Cambridge was the gathering place for every holiday, birthday, and family milestone. She ruled with quiet authority, her steel-gray hair always perfectly coiffed, her pearls always gleaming against her cashmere sweaters. My cousins, Megan, Derek, and Tyler, were the golden children. Megan followed her father into cardiology at Mass General. Derek became a partner at his father's law firm by 30. Tyler ran a successful tech startup in Boston. Meanwhile, I studied art history, bounced between jobs at small galleries, and eventually settled into teaching art at a community college in Worcester. I was 16 when I first truly understood my place in the family hierarchy. It was Thanksgiving, and I'd brought my portfolio to show Grandma, hoping for her approval of my college plans. "Art school," Uncle Robert scoffed, cutting into his turkey. "Eleanor, tell her to apply to a real college. The girl needs practical skills." "Rachel has a gift," my father defended quietly. "A gift for what? Unemployment?" Aunt Patricia laughed. "My Derek just got accepted to Harvard pre-law." Grandma Eleanor simply sipped her wine and said, "Different paths for different people, I suppose." That night, I found my portfolio in the recycling bin, several pages crumpled. Then came my college graduation dinner at Grandma's house. I'd finally earned my master's in fine arts, and Dad had convinced everyone to celebrate. Uncle Robert brought an expensive bottle of scotch for the adults. "To Rachel," my father toasted, "who proved us all wrong and graduated with honors." "To Rachel," Uncle Robert echoed, then added with a smirk, "May you find someone who can support your hobbies." Everyone laughed, except my parents and Grandma. Megan, fresh from her medical school acceptance, patted my hand condescendingly. "Don't worry, Ratch. The community center is always looking for someone to teach finger painting to seniors." I excused myself to the bathroom and cried. But something changed when I turned 30. Grandma Eleanor called me to her house one rainy April afternoon. Alone in her study, surrounded by leather-bound books and photographs spanning generations, she revealed her grand gesture. "Rachel, I've watched how they treat you. she said, her voice stronger than her frail body suggested. They measure success in degrees and dollars, but I've always measured it differently. She handed me a folder containing legal documents. I'm making you executor of my estate. Only you and my lawyer know the contents of my will. I was stunned. Why me? Why not Uncle Robert or Aunt Patricia? Because you're the only one who sees people for who they are, not what they have. She squeezed my hand. Don't tell anyone until the time is right. Promise me. For 5 years, I kept that promise. I managed her investments, organized her finances, and kept our arrangements secret, all while enduring family gatherings where I was still treated as the charity case, the cousin who never lived up to her potential. What no one knew was that Grandma Eleanor had a secret of her own, one that would redefine our family forever, one that explained why she chose me, the family disappointment, to handle everything she valued most. Grandma Eleanor's 80th birthday celebration was planned for months. Aunt Patricia insisted on hosting it at her country club in Brooklyn, a place where membership costs more than my annual salary. The Evite specified elegant attire and meaningful gifts only, which was Patricia speak for expensive or don't bother. I spent 3 months creating a handmade quilt chronicling Grandma's life, each square representing a significant moment. Her childhood home in Worcester, her wedding, the birth of each child, her favorite garden. I poured every artistic skill I had into it, staying up late after teaching classes, sourcing vintage fabrics that matched the eras of her life. The morning of the party, I called my best friend, Sophia. "They're going to hate it," I said, carefully folding the quilt into a simple gift box. "Who cares?" Sophia replied. "It's not for them. It's for your grandmother." "You don't understand. Last Christmas, Derek bought her a first edition Hemingway. Tyler got her a weekend at Canyon Ranch. My gift will look pathetic next to theirs." "Eleanor isn't that shallow," Sophia said. "No, but her children are." I arrived early to help set up, but Patricia's event planner shooed me away. "We have staff for that," she said, eyeing my sensible heels and simple navy dress, the nicest I owned. Instead, I found Grandma in a private room, already tired from greeting early arrivals. "There's my girl," she smiled, patting the seat beside her. "Did you bring the papers I asked for?" I nodded, patting my bag. "The updated portfolio statements and the letter from your lawyer. Do you really want to do this today?" "I'm 80 years old, Rachel. There's no time like the present." Her eyes twinkled with mischief. "Besides, I want to see their faces." Before I could ask what she meant, Megan appeared in a designer dress that probably cost more than my car. "Grandma, you shouldn't be hidden away in here. Everyone's asking for you." She barely acknowledged me with a nod. "Rachel, nice of you to come early. The caterer needs help in the kitchen." "I'm not staff, Megan," I said quietly. "Of course not. I just assumed." She trailed off with a practiced smile. The party progressed predictably. 100 guests in the grand ballroom, a string quartet, champagne flowing, Grandma seated at the head table with her children and their spouses, while the grandchildren shared the adjacent table. I was placed between Tyler's wife, who was too busy networking to speak to me, and a distant cousin I barely knew. When dinner ended, Patricia announced it was time for the grandchildren to present their gifts. As the eldest, Megan went first. "Grandma, to celebrate your incredible life, I've established the Eleanor Sullivan Cardiology Fellowship at Harvard Medical School." She presented an engraved plaque while cameras flashed. Derek followed with a small velvet box. "A rare sapphire brooch to match your eyes," he announced, "from that jeweler in Paris you loved when we visited last summer." Tyler had arranged a private concert with Grandma's favorite chamber orchestra at Symphony Hall. Then it was my turn. With trembling hands, I carried my box to Grandma. "I made you a quilt," I said simply. "Each square tells part of your story." As Grandma began to unfold it, I heard Megan whisper to Derek, "Seriously? A blanket?" Derek snickered. "Probably got the idea from a Pinterest board." "At least now we know what we're getting for Christmas," Tyler added, just loud enough for the table to hear. Laughter rippled through my cousins and their spouses. I felt my face burning. Grandma was examining the quilt with genuine interest, but Patricia cut in. "That's lovely, Rachel, but we should move on to the cake before it's too late. Eleanor tires easily these days." As the staff wheeled in an elaborate 3-tiered cake, I noticed Grandma whisper something to her lawyer, Mr. Abernathy, who had been quietly observing from a nearby table. He nodded and slipped a document into her hand. Grandma tapped her glass for attention. "Before we cut the cake, I have an announcement to make." Her voice was stronger than I'd heard in months. "As some of you know, I've been considering my legacy recently." The room quieted. This wasn't on Patricia's carefully planned agenda. "Rachel," Grandma called, "bring me my reading glasses and that folder in your bag, dear." All eyes turned to me as I retrieved the documents I'd been safeguarding for years. I could feel Megan's stare burning into my back. "What's this about, Mom?" Uncle Robert asked, his voice tight with sudden concern. Grandma smiled at me as I handed her the folder. "It's about time this family learned the truth about a few things," she said, opening the document with deliberate slowness, starting with who really controls the Sullivan family fortune. The room fell silent as Grandma Eleanor adjusted her reading glasses and looked around at the assembled family members. Her fingers, spotted with age but steady, opened the folder I'd handed her. "For the past 5 years," she began, "Rachel has been acting as the executor of my estate. She has managed my investments, overseen my finances, and helped me make some important decisions about my legacy." Uncle Robert choked on his champagne. Aunt Patricia's perfectly Botoxed face somehow managed to register shock. "Mom, that can't be right," Uncle Robert sputtered. "These are complex financial matters. Rachel is an art teacher." He said my profession like it was a communicable disease. Grandma ignored him and continued. "Rachel has demonstrated something the rest of you seem to have forgotten, that wealth isn't measured solely by dollar signs, and success isn't defined by prestigious titles." Megan's face had gone pale. Derek was frantically texting someone under the table, probably his law partner. Tyler just stared, slack-jawed. "But Grandma," Megan interjected, "we've been helping you with your estate planning for years. Daddy has your power of attorney." "Had," Grandma corrected. "I changed it 5 years ago. Mr. Abernathy can confirm." She nodded toward her lawyer, who gave a solemn nod. The tension in the room was suffocating as Grandma continued. "Today, I want to announce some changes to my will, changes Rachel has helped me implement." That's when the whispering started. I could hear snippets. "She's been manipulated. Elder abuse. Not in her right mind." And suddenly, something in me snapped. 5 years of secrets. A lifetime of dismissive comments. The laughter at my gift. The quilt I'd poured my heart into while they'd simply written checks or made phone calls to exclusive vendors. I stood up. "Actually, Grandma," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "may I?" She looked at me with those knowing eyes and handed me the folder. "By all means, dear." I cleared my throat and faced my family. Since you all think my handmade quilt is so hilarious, I think it's time you know what Grandma actually left each of you in her will. Megan's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. Derek's perfect smile faltered. Megan, you're getting Grandma's pearls. Just the pearls. Not the Sullivan Family Medical Trust that paid for your education and has been financing your private practice. That's being converted into scholarships for underprivileged students. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Derek, you're receiving Grandma's first edition book collection, but the vacation properties in Vermont and Florida, those are being sold, with proceeds going to arts education programs across Massachusetts. Derek's face turned an alarming shade of red. Tyler, you get Grandma's vintage record collection that you've always admired. The investment portfolio that seeded your startup, it's being restructured into a foundation for public school arts programs. I turned to my aunts and uncles. As for the family estate in Cambridge and the bulk of Grandma's financial assets, they're being placed in a trust. Uncle Robert stood up, his napkin falling to the floor. This is preposterous! Mom, you can't possibly. The trust, I continued over his objection, will be managed by me, with strict conditions on how funds can be distributed to family members. I pulled out the final document, the one Grandma had asked me to draft just last month. Going forward, family members will receive distributions based on demonstrated community service, charitable giving as a percentage of income, and participation in the new Sullivan Family Foundation, which will focus on making arts and education accessible to all. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Uncle Robert was shouting about contesting the will, Aunt Patricia had burst into tears. My cousins were all talking at once, their voices rising above the murmurs of shocked guests. Through it all, Grandma Eleanor sat calmly, a small smile playing on her lips. I placed the documents back in the folder and walked to her side. "You did beautifully," she whispered, squeezing my hand. Then, loudly enough for those nearby to hear, she added, "Rachel understands what I've always believed, that privilege demands responsibility, and wealth without compassion is meaningless." I bent down and kissed her cheek, then straightened and addressed the room once more. "The party's over. Grandma needs to rest now. Mr. Abernathy will be in touch with each of you regarding the details." As I helped Grandma rise from her seat, I caught sight of my father across the room. He was standing very still, a look of quiet pride on his face. My mother beside him, wiping away tears. I led Grandma through the stunned crowd, past my raging uncle, past my sobbing aunt, past my cousins who couldn't even look me in the eye. In the quiet of the country club's private lounge, Grandma finally spoke again. "You know they'll fight this." I nodded. "Mr. Abernathy says the documents are ironclad." "It's not the money that matters, Rachel. It's the lesson." She patted my hand. Though I must admit, the looks on their faces were priceless. For the first time in my life, I felt like a true Sullivan, not because I controlled the family fortune, but because I had finally found my voice. The aftermath was exactly as explosive as you'd expect. Within 24 hours, Uncle Robert had rallied his children and brother for an emergency family meeting, to which I wasn't invited. My phone buzzed constantly with texts from cousins who had suddenly discovered my number. "We need to talk. This is a misunderstanding. You can't do this to us." But the most revealing message came from Megan. "Did you plan this all along? Pretending to be the family doormat while plotting behind our backs?" I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I spent Sunday afternoon with Grandma at her Cambridge home, drinking Earl Grey from her fine china and watching the garden birds. Mr. Abernathy joined us, bringing the official paperwork for the new foundation. They've already contacted 3 different attorneys, he informed us, stirring honey into his tea, all of whom I've spoken with. The will is airtight, especially given Eleanor's documented mental acuity and the 5-year paper trail of Rachel's executorship. They think I've been manipulated, Grandma said with a snort, as if anyone could make me do anything I didn't want to do in 80 years. Monday morning brought an unexpected visitor to my small apartment, my father. He stood awkwardly in my living room, looking at my paintings on the walls as if seeing them for the first time. "You knew about this for 5 years?" he asked quietly. I nodded. Grandma swore me to secrecy. "And you never told me?" "It wasn't an accusation, just a statement." "I couldn't, Dad. I'm sorry." He ran his hand through his gray hair that had prematurely aged from years of standing between his ambitious brothers and his artistic daughter. "You know what Robert called me this morning? The smart one? Said I must have planned this all along, encouraging you to get close to Mom while his kids were too busy with their careers." He gave a bitter laugh, as if I could have orchestrated something this elaborate. "Are you angry?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. "No, I'm proud. Not because of the money or because you've upset your uncle, but because you stood up for yourself. Finally." That conversation with my father was the first step in a complex reshuffling of family dynamics. The next came 3 days later when Tyler appeared at the community college where I teach. I found him waiting outside my classroom, looking uncomfortable in casual clothes instead of his usual bespoke suits. "Can we talk?" he asked, his usual confidence absent. Not about the money, about other things. Over coffee in the faculty lounge, Tyler revealed something I never knew. He hated running his tech company. He'd started it to please his father, abandoning his true passion for documentary filmmaking. "Remember when we were kids and I used to follow you around with that old video camera?" he asked. "That's all I ever wanted to do." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because you're the only one who might understand." He stared into his coffee. "And because I need help with the community service requirement if I want to access my trust fund." I couldn't help but laugh at his honesty. "At least you're transparent about your motivations." What Tyler proposed next surprised me. A documentary series about arts education in underserved communities, the very focus of Grandma's new foundation. It would fulfill his service requirement while letting him pursue his passion. "I'm not asking for foundation money," he clarified. "I've got savings. I just need guidance. And maybe access to your contacts in the arts community." It was the first time any of my cousins had acknowledged that my career might have value. Megan and Derek took longer to come around. 2 weeks after the birthday party, Grandma summoned all the grandchildren to Sunday dinner, a Sullivan tradition we'd abandoned years ago. The tension around the table was palpable as Grandma's housekeeper served pot roast and potatoes. "I won't tolerate this family being torn apart," Grandma announced after we'd eaten in uncomfortable silence. "You're all successful in different ways. It's time you recognized that in each other." Derek, ever the lawyer, spoke first. "The terms of your new will are unusually prescriptive, Grandma." "They're values-based," I corrected, "something this family has forgotten." "Easy for you to say now that you're holding all the cards," Megan muttered. "I'm not holding anything," I replied. "I'm managing a trust according to Grandma's wishes. There's a difference." Grandma tapped her water glass. "Enough. Rachel isn't your enemy. Your own entitlement is." She looked at each of us in turn. "Every one of you has talents. Together, you could make the Sullivan Foundation something remarkable." What followed was an unexpected revelation. Grandma had been disappointed in all of us, not just my cousins for their materialism, but me for my reluctance to fight for my place in the family. "Rachel," she said, turning to me, "having the moral high ground isn't enough. You need courage to defend it." Over the following months, the Sullivan family underwent a painful but necessary transformation. Uncle Robert eventually stopped threatening legal action when he realized the publicity would damage his reputation. Aunt Patricia found unexpected fulfillment in organizing the first Sullivan Foundation Gala, her event planning skills finally channeled towards something meaningful. My relationship with my cousins evolved too. Tyler and I launched the documentary project, which led to Megan reluctantly volunteering at a community health clinic to fulfill her service requirement. She later admitted that treating patients who couldn't afford specialized care reminded her why she became a doctor in the first place. Derek struggled the most, clinging to his resentment until his wife threatened to leave him. "You're turning into your father," she told him, "and I didn't sign up for that." He eventually joined the foundation's legal advisory board, offering pro bono services to artists dealing with copyright issues. As for me, the quilt I'd made for Grandma now hangs prominently in her Cambridge home. She calls it the gift that changed everything. The most unexpected twist came 6 months after the infamous birthday party. While organizing Grandma's papers, I discovered old letters between her and a man named Thomas, a struggling artist she'd loved in her youth but didn't marry because her parents disapproved. The letters revealed that Grandma had secretly supported arts education her entire life, funding programs in Thomas's name. My grandmother, the shrewd businesswoman, the family matriarch, had been an arts patron all along. She'd recognized herself in me from the beginning. Last week, we inaugurated the Thomas Sullivan Art Center in Worcester, named for the artist who inspired my grandmother's lifetime of quiet philanthropy. As I watched Grandma cut the ribbon, surrounded by my reformed family, I realized that her greatest inheritance wasn't the money. It was the courage to stand up for what matters, even when you're standing alone. It's been a year since that birthday party that changed everything. The Sullivan Family Foundation has funded arts programs in 15 schools across Massachusetts. Tyler's documentary won a regional film award. Even Megan and Derek have found unexpected fulfillment in their community service work. As for Grandma Eleanor, at 81, she's more vibrant than ever, regularly visiting the arts center, attending student showcases, and still managing to keep all of us in line with nothing more than a raised eyebrow. The family that gathered for Thanksgiving this year barely resembled the status-obsessed clan of my youth. We still disagree, sometimes loudly, but now we're arguing about which community projects to fund, not whose career is more prestigious. I've learned that sometimes what looks like humiliation is actually the universe positioning you exactly where you need to be. That quiet persistence can be more powerful than flashy success, and that true family isn't defined by DNA or inheritance, but by shared values and mutual respect. If you're facing your own family struggles, remember this: standing in your truth isn't about revenge, it's about restoration. It's about creating space for everyone to become their authentic selves. If you found meaning in my story, please subscribe to hear more journeys of transformation and family healing. Your comments and experiences matter too. Share them below. Together, we're building a community that values substance over status, creativity over conformity, and compassion over competition. Because sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't what's in the will, it's the wisdom to know what truly matters.